Captain Jake Morrison stood tall on the bridge of the UES Defiance, eyes fixed on the massive display ahead. Alien vessels choked the void beyond, a wall of metal and light stretching across the stars. Each one dwarfed even humanity's largest. Cruisers, and they numbered in the hundreds, blocking the path to the Kepler system. That message had come through 3 days earlier, transmitted by deep space comms. The senders called themselves the Zephyrian Empire, and their warning was, as precise as it was icy, humans were to steer clear of Kepler, or face annihilation. The translators had spent hours decoding their bizarre tongue, but the final message was stark. Lieutenant Lisa Brookie sat at her console, reading the alien words again. Her fingers moved across the interface, pulling up the complete text. The Zephyrian threat glowed on her screen, green against black. "They claim Kepler now," she reported, eyes never leaving her display. "Any human ship that enters will be destroyed. They've offered us one chance. Turn around and leave." Commander Ryan Clark approached the captain's side. His uniform bore the wear of countless missions, his face carved by years of war and sleepless command. He had been out in the stars longer than most of the crew had drawn breath. "That makes 27 systems," he said quietly. "Every last one discovered by human scouts. We found them, and now the Zephyrians just take them." 18 months had passed since the Zephyrian Empire first emerged deep from the galactic dark. Their ships moved faster than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons tore through reinforced armor like paper. They'd already wiped out 3 alien civilizations, showing no hint of restraint or mercy. Jake studied the tactical screen. The Zephyrian formation filled millions of kilometers with eerie precision. Ships aligned in flawless rows, each one humming with energy fields that warped the space around them like heat off water. Their weapons were fully primed. The comms panel chimed. A figure materialized on the central screen. Admiral Kate Sullivan beamed from Earth via the quantum net that linked every Terran vessel. Her face was drawn tight, voice grave. "Captain Morrison," she began, "I won't mislead you. Our analysts confirm they outnumber your fleet 4 to 1. Their weaponry eclipses ours, and their shields can repel even our heaviest barrages." Jake gave a small nod, forcing calm into his voice, though dread coiled in his gut. Around him, his crew worked in quiet rhythm. They had followed him from one side of the galaxy to the other, trusting he would keep them alive. Now he was leading them into what might be their final mission. "Admiral, we're aware of the danger," he replied. "But Kepler 442b has been isolated for 3 weeks. No supplies, no comms. The colony has 15,000 civilians, men, women, children. They're running out of food and medicine." The bridge fell silent. Every officer knew what that meant. Without aid, the colony wouldn't survive the month. The youngest would go first when the food was gone, then the weak and the old. In time, even the strong would wither. Navigation Officer Tony Martinez tapped a few commands, bringing up a display of the asteroid belt between Defiance and the colony world. The field held massive chunks of rock, potential cover, but also a trap. "Sir," Tony offered, "we might use the asteroids to shield our approach. If we move carefully, stay hidden, we might slip through." Lisa shook her head, reviewing sensor scans. "Their detection systems are light years ahead. They'd see us coming long before we reached the colony. Their outer patrols alone would intercept us." Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her terminal. She'd been quietly crunching numbers, but now her voice held the spark of something forming. Younger than the rest of the command crew, Amy's sharp intellect had earned their attention. "Maybe getting detected is the goal," she said thoughtfully. Heads turned toward her. Jake saw the familiar fire in her eyes, the look she got when a problem began to unravel. "What are you thinking, Doctor?" he asked. Amy rose and stepped to the center of the bridge. Her fingers danced across the console, bringing up a full holographic display of the Kepler system. Dots marked every human ship in the region. "The Zephyrians believe they've figured us out," she began. "They've dissected our military playbook, studied our engines, our weapons, our tactics. They believe we'll behave like every other species they've crushed." She gestured toward the alien fleet. "They expect us to act predictably, but humans don't fight by the book. We rewrite it. Big fleets fight predictable battles, retreat when casualties grow too high." Commander Clark could already see where this was headed. "But that's not how humans fight," he said. "Exactly," Amy replied, nodding. "Every other species they've conquered fights by the book. They lead with their heaviest warships and shield their civilians from combat. But we don't work like that." She shifted the holographic view to highlight every human vessel in the Kepler region. Cargo haulers, mining transports, planetary survey ships, colonial transports, and even sleek pleasure yachts lit up across the system. "For the past 6 months," Amy explained, "every civilian ship in human space has been receiving upgraded nav systems. At least, that's what the paperwork says. But those upgrades do more than help with piloting." Jake's expression turned grim as he pieced it together. "You're saying we've turned civilian vessels into weapons?" Amy smiled faintly. "The Zephyrians expect a conventional attack from our warships while civilian traffic flees. What they don't expect is a cargo barge or a science cruiser fighting back. That's not what they consider civilized warfare." The display shifted again, showing internal schematics. Every one of those civilian ships is carrying gear capable of disrupting Zephyrian shield harmonics. To their sensors, it looks like standard nav equipment, but it's not. Tony leaned in, processing the data with rising interest. "So while they concentrate on Defiance making a frontal assault, we'll already have 347 civilian ships in flanking positions," he said. Jake nodded. "Exactly. They warned us not to enter Kepler, but they said nothing about those already here." The bridge fell into deep silence. The scale of the plan was audacious, bordering on madness. But there was logic behind it, and desperation gave it weight. On the screen, Admiral Sullivan remained expressionless, though the tension was clear in her eyes. "Captain, are you sure this is the path you want to take? If your assumption about their sensor thresholds is incorrect, we could lose the entire civilian fleet." Jake turned and looked at each of his officers. Veterans all, they had followed him across battles and black space. He had placed his life in their hands more than once, and now he asked them to do the same. "Admiral," he said, voice steady, "the Zephyrians sent us a warning. They told us to stay out of Kepler. They say it belongs to them now. They think a wall of ships will scare us off. They believe we'll just retreat and surrender what's ours." He turned back to the main display where the alien fleet waited in silent perfection. "But what they don't know, what they didn't learn from dissecting our battles, is that when someone threatens our people, we don't back down. We don't fold. And we never abandon civilians just because an empire tells us to." Jake stepped toward his chair and sat, shoulders squared. "All stations, begin final prep for approach to Kepler 442b. Navigation, plot a direct course to the colony. Ignore the alien formation." Around him, the bridge came alive as the crew moved to their tasks. The hum of consoles and quiet confirmations filled the air. This was likely their last mission, and they all knew it. But no one hesitated. Jake tapped the console on his armrest, opening a wide band channel to every human ship currently present in the system. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UEE's Defiance to all civilian vessels currently in the Kepler system. In approximately 2 hours, we are going to show the Zephyrian Empire what happens when they threaten human colonies. Stand by for further orders." He closed the channel and stared at the growing image of the alien fleet on the main screen. The Zephyrians had tried to cow humanity with sheer numbers and advanced firepower. They had warned humans not to enter Kepler space, but humans were coming anyway. In the Defiance's cargo bay, Chief Engineer Ben Parker supervised the loading of seemingly ordinary crates. The containers bore standard labels: food rations, medical kits, water purification gear. But inside, hidden away, were 37 devices crafted in secret labs back on Earth. Ben wiped sweat from his brow as he watched his crew secure the modified cargo. They had spent the last 3 days rewiring the hold, rerouting power lines, and integrating systems that would control the hidden equipment when the signal came. In the briefing room, Dr. Amy Foster was detailing the full strategy to the ship's senior officers. A glowing display filled the air, showing human colonies scattered across dozens of stars, each dot representing thousands who had left Earth for a new beginning. "The Zephyrians think they've figured us out," she said, pointing to the map. "They've studied every race they've conquered, and they all follow the same strategy. Find a viable planet, settle it, build up slowly with defenses and expansion." Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh leaned back in his chair with a cocky grin. The ship's tactical officer had spent years immersed in alien battle doctrines. "But we humans do dumb things just to see if they work," he said with a laugh. Amy smirked and switched the view to show a galaxy-wide spread of human ships. "Exactly. While they focused their intel on our military, they completely overlooked our civilian fleet: merchant ships, research craft, passenger liners, private yachts." She highlighted the interconnected network that bound these ships. All of them are linked by quantum comms, real-time contact across vast distances. The Zephyrians see that as nothing more than navigation convenience, but it's so much more. Jake was beginning to understand the scope of her plan. "You want to transform our entire civilian fleet into a coordinated weapons grid." "For the past 8 months," Amy explained, "every human ship that visited a major port received upgrades. Officially, improved nav systems, better sensors, enhanced comm arrays. Technical schematics appeared. The sleek-looking devices all looked harmless. What they don't know," Amy continued, "is that each one includes a compact quantum interference generator." Ben Parker joined the briefing via live feed from the cargo bay, tools in hand, and uniform stained with grease. "The best part is, they can't tell the difference. Their sensors see a merchant ship, and that's exactly what it appears to be." Commander Ryan Clark leaned forward, weighing the strategy. "So while the Zephyrians watch us coming head-on, 347 civilian ships quietly move into flanking positions." Jake nodded. "They told us to stay away from Kepler. They never imagined we'd already be inside." Amy changed the display again, now focusing on energy wave simulations. "Zephyrian shields function on a unique frequency band. We've studied their combat signatures for months. When multiple interference units trigger, simultaneously the fields overlap. The screen showed waves crashing into each other, distortions spiraling into collapse. The result is full shield destabilization across their formation," Amy concluded. Steve leaned forward, eyes wide. "How long do we have once their shields drop?" "Maybe 10 minutes, Ben answered. "Long enough to hurt them. After that, they'll recalibrate." Amy brought up another visual, one that categorized the types of civilian ships already in Kepler space. Cargo vessels have mining lasers, industrial cutters. Research ships are fitted with high-resolution scanners that can be repurposed for targeting. Even passenger liners carry waste disposal systems capable of damaging alien infrastructure. The strategy was bold to the point of lunacy. No advanced species would ever dream of using civilian assets in warfare. The idea violated every convention of interstellar conduct, but humanity had never been too concerned with alien rules. Jake scanned the room, eyes resting on each of his senior officers. These were the people who had served beside him through war and peace, through hope and defeat. Now he was asking them to risk everything on a plan that relied on untrained civilians acting like seasoned warriors. "What about the civilian crews?" he asked at last. "They aren't soldiers. They signed up to haul freight and study planets, not assault alien fleets. Amy smiled, reaching for her console. Let me show you. Something, Captain. The main screen lit up with the image of Carol Green, captain of a cargo freighter. She looked calm and composed, mid-50s, silver streaks in her hair, and laugh lines framing steady eyes. Her ship was currently ferrying mining equipment from the asteroid belt to the primary colony. Carol, Amy said, can you tell the captain what your crew thinks of the Zephyrian ultimatum? Carol's tone turned serious, her voice unwavering. Captain Morrison, we've been talking about this situation for the last 3 days. Many of us have people down on that colony. My daughter teaches first grade in the colony's school. She paused, then looked directly into the camera. Sir, they can threaten us all they want. They can flash their giant ships and fire their fancy weapons. But they made one mistake, one that'll cost them everything. Jake leaned forward. And what mistake was that? Carol's eyes flared with purpose. They threatened our children, she said, and no human in this system is going to let that slide. The feed switched. Dr. Phil Watson from the Deep Explorer appeared on screen. A quiet man with thick glasses, he normally studied gas giants and atmospheric behavior. His voice was calm, but every word was sharp. Captain, we've been reviewing Zephyrian ship layouts for weeks. We've pinpointed their life support clusters and how to disrupt them. The Zephyrians think scientists are harmless just because we don't carry guns. He held up what looked like a common atmospheric probe. But they're about to find out that in the right hands, science gear can be as lethal as any warhead. Another image flickered onto the screen. Rick Turner, owner of the luxury yacht Golden Dreams. A wealthy entrepreneur caught with his family during a vacation tour. Captain Morrison, he said, my ship isn't combat grade, not even close. But we've been intercepting Zephyrian comm chatter for days. My entertainment suite's broadcasting systems can jam their targeting arrays. One by one, civilian commanders across the system reported in. Freighters, research ships, passenger, liners, mining rigs, even a handful of private yachts. All of them had quietly adapted for war while hiding behind the illusion of routine operations. Amy powered down the comm interface and turned to face Jake. Captain, you asked about untrained civilians facing a real fight, but I think you're asking the wrong question. She gestured to the darkened screen where those civilian faces had appeared. These aren't just bystanders anymore. The moment the Zephyrians threatened human colonies, every merchant became a fighter. Every scientist became a soldier. Every tourist became a protector. Jake was starting to realize what the aliens had overlooked. They're not fighting for territory, he said slowly. They're fighting for their families, Clark added, and that makes them more dangerous than any standing army. Down in the cargo bay, Ben Parker secured the final crate and sealed the hold. All systems ready, he reported. Interference generators synced across the civilian fleet. Steve. Walsh ran one last scan over the tactical grid. Sir, the Zephyrian fleet hasn't moved, but their weapons are live. They're going to fire the moment we're in range. Amy reviewed the sensor feed showing the Zephyrian formation. Let them concentrate on us. Every scan they waste on Defiance is one less aimed at the ships encircling them. Jake rose from his chair and walked to the front of the briefing room. Beyond the window, stars burned like distant fires, lights that had led explorers, dreamers, and rebels through the black for generations. Each one represented hope. And the Zephyrians thought they could seize that hope by wielding fear and firepower. They thought overwhelming force would make humans retreat. But they'd never dealt with a species that refused to leave its own behind, no matter the cost. They had never seen what happened when freighters became warships. Out in space, the Zephyrian flagship Sovereign Death loomed like a temple forged, from shadow and plasma. Nearly 5 kilometers long, its surface bristled with enough firepower to shatter moons. Admiral Vexy stood atop the command platform, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical holosphere. His elongated skull was crowned with dermal ridges that pulsed from deep purple to black, signs of irritation and contempt. The human ship edging into view was half the size of his smallest escort craft. It looked like it had been cobbled together. "From salvage and scrap, the humans advance," reported Tactical Prime Zordon. "No deceleration, no change in vector." Down or altering their vector. They're staying on a straight course to the colony world. Admiral Vexy narrowed his eyes at the sensor feed. The human vessel, Defiance, was classified in their files as a retrofitted exploration ship. It had been reinforced for combat, but its weaponry was outdated and its shielding subpar by any advanced standard. "Did they receive our transmission?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral," confirmed a communications officer. The message was acknowledged. Their systems translated and decoded it properly, and yet they continue their approach as though our warning meant nothing. Vexy walked toward the enormous forward observation window. The Defiance was visible now, a faint pinprick of white light inching closer through the stars. Against the vastness of space, it was barely noticeable, but it was growing. He felt an odd mix of admiration and contempt. "Perhaps they seek negotiation," suggested Communications Prime Yelmora. "Primitive species sometimes require direct, personal exchanges before recognizing imperial authority." Vexy considered the idea, but dismissed it quickly. "Or perhaps we are simply seeing more of the irrational defiance that has made humans such a volatile anomaly in this region." The Zephyrian Command had analyzed human expansion patterns for months, and none of it made sense. Where other races colonized based on logic, humans often settled barren, hostile systems while ignoring lush, resource-rich worlds. "Admiral," said Zordon, "shall we charge the main batteries?" "Not yet," Vexy replied. "Let's see how far they take this absurd performance before clarity returns to them." Aboard the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the enemy formation swell on the main screen. The Zephyrian vessels were stunning in their own ominous way. Their hulls curved and pulsed like organic forms, surrounded by shifting energy fields that distorted nearby space into rippling hues. "Distance to fleet perimeter?" he asked. Tony Martinez checked his readings. 2 million kilometers, 47 minutes to their outer patrol zone at current speed. The tension was suffocating. Everyone on the bridge knew what this mission likely meant. Lisa Brooks double-checked the comm systems. Commander Clark pored over grim tactical readouts, showing how hopelessly outgunned they were. "Captain incoming hail," Lisa said. "Audio only." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge had been filtered through translation protocols, but its arrogance still came through sharp and clear. "This is Admiral Vexhai of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are ordered to cease your approach and reverse course immediately. This system is under Imperial jurisdiction. You hold no rights to travel through or enter our sovereign territory." Jake stood slowly, straightened his jacket, and replied without hesitation, keeping his voice level despite the anxiety crawling through him. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth vessel Defiance. We are conducting a humanitarian operation, delivering food and medical supplies to the human colony in the Kepler system. We are not here to engage in hostilities." There was a pause. Then Vexy's voice returned, this time edged with amusement. "Captain Morrison, your intentions are irrelevant. This star system now belongs to the Zephyrian Empire, claimed by right of military supremacy. You will withdraw your primitive vessel, or your presence will be considered an act of war." Jake's eyes met those of his officers. They'd crossed uncharted space together, faced ambushes and disasters, always holding to trust in each other. Now he was about to lead them into a situation where conventional logic gave them no chance. "Admiral Vexy," he said, "I cannot comply. The colonists on Kepler 442b are running out of supplies. Without this shipment, 15,000 lives, including thousands of children, will be lost. They will serve as an example to other races who consider defying the Empire," Vexy replied coldly. The signal cut out with a sharp burst of static. Across the alien fleet, formation patterns shifted. Long dormant weapons began drawing energy, casting spectral glows along the graceful Zephyrian hulls. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her console, alarm tightening her features. "Jake, their fleet is powering up across all sectors. Whatever they're preparing will overwhelm us instantly." "Good," Jake said, almost to himself. "The more power they draw to their weapon banks, the less they have to spare for sensor depth." All across the Kepler system, civilian traffic remained unchanged. Cargo haulers stayed on scheduled supply runs. Research ships maintained planetary orbits. To Zephyrian scans, everything looked ordinary. Captain Carol Green aboard Steady Progress continued ferrying mining tools without deviation from her filed route toward the asteroid belt. Her vessel appeared indistinguishable from the thousands of cargo haulers transporting freight across human space daily. Zephyrian sensors identified it as a standard, unarmed civilian ship with no offensive capability. What those scans couldn't see was that Carol had spent the last 48 hours rewiring power conduits through every deck. The mining rigs in her cargo bay had been retrofitted with remote-trigger detonators. Her nav computer now contained targeting software sophisticated enough to guide the modified machines with deadly precision. Dr. Phil Watson continued his research aboard Deep Explorer. His ship maintained a stable orbit around a gas giant at the system's edge, seemingly engaged in routine data collection. Zephyrian intelligence had labeled him a harmless academic, studying the chemical makeup of high-atmosphere clouds. What they hadn't realized was that Phil had been using his advanced scanning suite to chart every structural detail of the Zephyrian fleet. His atmospheric probes had been re-engineered into kinetic missiles, small, fast, and able to punch through reinforced hulls to reach internal life support grids. Even Rick Turner aboard Golden Dreams, the sleek luxury yacht still cruising between outposts, was viewed as non-threatening. The Zephyrian saw his vessel as an idle pleasure ship, barely worth tracking in any battle scenario. They didn't know Rick had been reprogramming his entertainment broadcast array into a high-powered jamming device. While Golden Dreams lacked weapons, it could emit wideband interference strong enough to blind enemy sensors and scramble their targeting algorithms at the most critical moment. But none of that concerned Admiral Vexhai. His full attention remained on the Defiance, the lone human warship still advancing. His tactical feed displayed the vessel as a single, easily eliminated threat. Its weapons were crude by Zephyrian standards. Its shields, laughably obsolete. "Tactical Prime," Vexhai commanded coldly. "Prepare to make an example. I want the engagement fully recorded for distribution to other species. Let the galaxy see what becomes of those who defy Imperial sovereignty." Zordon initiated the fleet-wide charge protocol. Power levels surged across hundreds of vessels. Reactor cores roared to full capacity as weapon banks glowed with annihilation. "Shall we offer surrender one final time?" asked Yelmora. "No," Vexhai replied. "They had their chance. Now they will learn that the Zephyrian Empire does not bluff." Aboard the Defiance, Jake opened a comm channel linked to every human-flagged ship in the system. It bridged the gap between survey craft, haulers, research crews, tourists, and soldiers. Every human ear would hear this. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Defiance, broadcasting to all human vessels in the Kepler system. In 15 minutes, we will show the Zephyrian Empire what it means to threaten humanity." His voice was steady, absolute. "All civilian vessels, prepare to execute Protocol 7 on my signal." He ended the transmission and looked to the tactical feed one last time. The alien fleet was poised like a steel sculpture, perfectly aligned, weapons hot, waiting. They had overwhelming superiority in size, numbers, and tech. But they had made a single catastrophic mistake. They assumed humanity would play by the rules, the same rules that every other race in the galaxy had followed. Jake took his seat. The first Zephyrian volley turned space into a kaleidoscope of radiant death. Lances of violet energy, each capable of reducing asteroids to vapor, lashed out from 17 vectors, converging on the Defiance. The human ship danced. Rolling, pivoting, twisting through the void like a living thing, the Defiance slipped. Between the incoming blasts by millimeters, Jake's hands gripped the arms of his command chair as the hull screamed under the pressure of near-miss shockwaves. The inertial dampeners strained, barely keeping the crew from being crushed against the walls. Panels exploded. Red warnings blared across the bridge. The acrid sting of burning plastic filled the air. "Shield status!" Jake yelled over the rising roar. Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh scanned the tactical readout as a second wave of beams streaked toward them. Energy beams screamed past their hull. "Shields down to 60%, Walsh called out. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Emergency force fields are holding for now, but we can't take many more hits." Chief Engineer Ben Parker had already, rerouted auxiliary power from the life support systems to keep the shields online. Emergency air recycling and dim red lighting replaced normal operations. If they didn't restore power soon, the crew would have less than 20 minutes of breathable air left. Commander Ryan Clark studied the enemy's targeting pattern, frowning as data flashed across his screen. "They're not trying to finish us off," he said grimly. "Look at the shot intervals, deliberate spacing, just enough power to weaken us gradually. They want this to be slow." Aboard the Sovereign Death, Admiral Vexhai watched with calm satisfaction as the human vessel flailed under the measured storm. The Zephyrian fleet attacked with cruel precision. The Defiance twisted and reeled, her movements frantic and wild as her defenses withered. Every beam that hit sparked a fresh system warning. Every near miss served as further proof of the hopelessness of resistance. "Tactical Prime," Vexhai said, voice smooth and cold. "Reduce fire intensity by 30%. I want this demonstration to last. Make sure the sensor data is clean. Transmit it to nearby systems. Let all species see what happens when one defies imperial law." So fixated was he on orchestrating this public execution that he failed to notice the subtle changes taking place beyond his screens. Dr. Amy Foster, deep in concentration, stared at the enemy's energy signature monitor. Her eyes widened. "Jake!" she shouted over the noise. "Their shield harmonics are matching our models exactly. It's working. The generators will get through." Jake didn't hesitate. He opened the emergency broadcast line that reached every human vessel in the Kepler system, freighters, science stations, passenger liners, and more. "All civilian ships," he said with unshakable resolve. "This is Captain Morrison. Execute Protocol 7, now." Across the system, 347 human vessels responded as one. Quantum interference generators, hidden for months inside ordinary civilian equipment, activated in perfect synchronization. Each one emitted energy signatures tuned to one purpose: disrupt and dismantle Zephyrian shield arrays. The result was immediate. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Tactical Prime Morvek was engulfed in a blizzard of red warnings. Systems flickered, sensors failed, and then, "Admiral!" he cried, panic breaking through his disciplined voice. "Massive shield failures across the entire fleet. Generators are collapsing." Admiral Vexhai's eyes narrowed as alerts cascaded across his command interface. "Impossible," he hissed. Captain Carol Green's monitor showed the warship nearest steady progress. Its shields gone, its hull suddenly vulnerable. Carol narrowed her eyes and whispered, "This is for threatening my daughter." She pressed the launch command. Mining charges, designed to crack asteroids the size of buildings, streaked toward the Zephyrian cruiser. Seconds later, they hit. The blast tore through armor plating like it was tin foil. Dr. Phil Watson initiated the launch sequence for his disguised atmospheric probes. They now targeted known weak points in alien vessels, exposed reactors, bridge supports, sensor domes. Deep Explorer was no warship, but its payload carried the weight of vengeance. Even aboard the luxury yacht Golden Dreams, Rick Turner was doing his part. With a few final commands, he unleashed his hacked entertainment systems, blistering electronic. Static poured into the communication frequencies of the Zephyrian fleet. Suddenly, the aliens were both blind and deaf. Targeting systems scrambled. Command relays failed. On the Sovereign Death, Vex-High roared in fury as his ship rocked from unexpected impacts. "How are they attacking us?" he bellowed. "Where are the weapons coming from?" Tactical Prime Zordon, surrounded by chaos, stared at his screen in disbelief. "Admiral, the attacks. They're coming from the civilians. Merchant vessels, survey ships, passenger craft are engaging us." The tactical interface no longer made sense. Cargo haulers rammed Imperial destroyers with reinforced bows. Science ships lit up targets using sensor-guided lasers. A cruise liner disabled a Zephyrian corvette by venting its waste system into its air processors. The laws of warfare, upheld by every advanced species, were being shattered in real time. "They've weaponized their entire civilian fleet," Vex-High muttered, stunned. "Merchants, scientists, tourists, they're all combatants." The Zephyrian fleet, which had ruled this region for months with calculated terror and overwhelming strength, was now civilizations. The human colonies near Kepler were now marked clearly in white, unchallenged by any neighboring claims. "Ambassador." Torres looked out at the gathered representatives of the Galactic Council. The room buzzed with nervous energy. 6 months after the battle, the shock waves had yet to settle. The collapse of the Zephyrian fleet had shattered long-held assumptions about power and warfare in the galaxy. "I stand before you today," Torres began, her voice calm but firm. "Not as a conqueror, not as a victor, but as a representative of a people who refused to abandon their own." The hall grew quiet. Even the more arrogant species, those who had previously dismissed humans as chaotic upstarts, leaned in to listen. "The Zephyrian Empire issued a warning," she continued. "They told us not to come to Kepler. They declared ownership over a system where 15,000 human civilians were already living, cut off from supplies and facing starvation." She paused, letting the weight of that number settle. "We were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched in every conceivable metric, and yet we came anyway, because for humans it is not a matter of what we can do, it's a matter of what we must do." On the central holo screen, footage played from the battle. Civilian freighters launching improvised missiles. A research vessel coordinating tactical strikes. A luxury yacht jamming enemy comms while spinning away from plasma fire. "This," Torres said, gesturing to the images, "is what happens when you mistake our civility for weakness. You think because our ships are old and our weapons are crude that we will back down. You think because we don't have the largest fleet that we lack resolve," delegates whispered, some visibly uncomfortable. Others, especially those from smaller or less militarized species, watched with quiet awe. "Let me be clear," Torres said. "Humanity does not seek war. We do not want to expand by conquest. But we will not, ever, stand aside while others threaten our people. There is no treaty, no claim of superiority, no amount of firepower that can make us abandon those we love." She looked directly at the Zephyrian delegation. Their seats were empty. The Empire had not sent anyone to this session. In Kepler, "You saw what happens when you back us into a corner," she said. "You did not face a fleet. You faced a species. And we are not alone. All across human space, civilians prepared to fight, to bleed, to die, not because we ordered them to, but because they chose to." Behind her, the footage changed. Images of the aftermath. Zephyrian ships drifting, surrender beacons flashing. Human cargo crews aiding wounded alien survivors, scientists offering medical aid, engineers helping repair damaged life support aboard enemy ships. "We did not come to exterminate. We came to protect," Torres said. "And when the threat passed, we offered help, even to those who tried to destroy us." A moment of silence followed. Then a representative from the Valari Confederation stood. His people had long kept humanity at diplomatic arm's length. "Ambassador Torres," he said cautiously, "do you mean to imply that all human civilians are now to be considered combatants?" "No," she replied. "I mean to tell you that every human being is willing to become one if necessary. That is what you saw at Kepler." Another delegate, this one from the Harthali Accord, spoke up. "What assurances do we have that Earth's people will not use this unpredictability as a weapon? What prevents your kind from turning every civilian ship into a missile?" "You misunderstand," Torres said evenly. "Kepler was not a strategy. It was a response. You want a guarantee? Here it is. Do not threaten us, and we will never raise a hand against you. But if you force our people into a corner, do not be surprised when scientists turn into soldiers and tourists fly into battle." Silence fell over the chamber. The weight of those words lingered. In that moment, the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted forever. They were no longer seen as simply another young race, brash, disorganized, impulsive. They were now something far more dangerous, unbreakable, unyielding, unified. Back aboard the Defiance, now stationed in orbit above, Kepler 442b, Captain Jake Morrison stood once more on the bridge. Life on the colony world below was slowly returning to normal. Supply lines had reopened, medicine flowed again, children laughed in the fields. But Jake knew the battle they had fought would echo far beyond this system. "Status, Lieutenant Brooks?" he asked. "Colonists report all infrastructure restored. Civilian ships are returning to standard operations." Jake nodded. "Good. Make sure every surrendering Zephyrian crew gets the food and medical aid they need. And broadcast our logs. To Earth Command. Make sure every detail gets recorded." Commander Clark stood beside him. "Do you think they'll try again?" Jake looked out at the stars. "Maybe. Or maybe they've learned." He turned to his crew, his people who had defied reason, protocol, and fear to protect what mattered most. "They sent us a message once," he said. "Told us not to come here. We sent one back." "What was it?" Clark asked. Jake smiled faintly. A stunned silence fell across the chamber. Even those who had previously criticized humanity now understood the fundamental miscalculation the Empire had made. Helen turned back to the holographic display. The stars glowed softly above the heads of the assembled delegates, each representing systems with human presence. "You wanted to know how we justify using civilian ships in combat," she said. "The truth is we didn't use them. They volunteered. Because for us, a threat to one is a threat to all." She paced slowly across the speaker's platform. "Our freighter captains didn't fire those weapons because we ordered them to. Our scientists didn't modify probes into missiles because of a military directive. Our tourists didn't scramble enemy sensors because of tactical training. They did it because the people on Kepler were ours. And humans do not abandon their own, the A." Crystalline Corvani delegate gently chimed again. "Then what message does your species wish to send to the rest of us?" Helen Torres looked across the chamber and spoke with quiet finality. "That if you treat our people with respect, we will be your allies, your partners, your friends, but if you threaten our children, our families, or our homes, you will not. Just fight our fleets. You will face every single one of us." In the Zephyrian delegation box, Admiral Vexhai slowly closed his eyes. He understood now. Too late. And that, more than fleets, more than weapons, more than any treaty, was what made humanity truly dangerous. They didn't fight for territory. They didn't fight for conquest. They fought for each other. And when the galaxy finally understood that, the wars began to slow, because somewhere, in every command center, on every world, in every fleet planning its next show of force, a single phrase echoed like a warning shot across the stars.